Welcome back, everybody, to the Coptic Rites class. I hope that you had a great week. As you may have noticed, last Sunday was one of the feasts of one of the greatest saints in the church. That is the feast of Saint Anthony the Great, the father of monasticism. So I thought for the Coptic, we can learn one of the hymns that I think all of us like, which is the Hymn of Binishti, which we chant during the liturgy for the saints. If we can read it together, I'll read the parts of it together, and I think the tune is very familiar to most of us. If I can get some volunteers to read, maybe each person can read like one piece. Christina?
How many lines, like how much would you like me to read?
Yeah, read until the colon, so each person can read like one saint.
Okay, sure. Pi-Nishti of Antoni.
Thank you, yes. Pi-Nishti, Nishti means great, P, the great, Ava is Ava, Antoni is Anthony. That's very easy. Pi-Nishti of Antoni. Okay, Gabby, can you read the next one?
Nembi.
Nem, good. P.
Nembi.
This is the theta, TH.
Nancy.
P, if me.
P. If me. Abba.
Ava. And here, this is a P, and then this is the epsilon. We said that the epsilon after an 8 is a V, right?
Yeah.
And this is the Lulla, the L.
So, Valo.
Pavli. Pavli, very good. Nem, P is me, Ava, Pavli. Nem and P is me, the righteous, Ava, Paul. Nem, P is me, Ava, Pavli. Thank you. Sue, would you like to read the next one?
Nem pi shunt web Makarios.
Excellent. Nem, P shunt web Makarios. Nem and again, P shunt. Shunt is the number 3. So the three saints, Nem Pi shunt web Makarios. So the 3 saints that are all called Makarios. There are 3 saints called Saint Macarius. So Nem Pi shunt web Makarios. Very good. The next one, let's see who's here. Siham, would you like to read the next one?
Abba Ioannis Bikolovos.
Bikolovos, very good. Ava Ioannis Bikolovos. Ava Jean, Ioannis is Jean, Bikolovos, the short or the dwarf. Very good. Okay, let's see who else is here. Thomas, would you like to read the next one? You can read the next 2 because this is very short.
Abba. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Abba Pioi.
Pishoi, this is the shy, Pishoi, good.
Abba
Lee.
Is that an L? Or?
Yes, that's an L.
Pavli.
Pavli, very good. So Ava Pishoi, Saint Pishoi, Ava Pishoi, Ava Pavli, Saint Paul. Okay. Let's see who else is here. We have Andrew. You want to read the next one from here? Okay, Andrew is not responding. Dr. Sharif, would you like to read the next one?
Sure. Ninioti Ithowab Niromos
In Romeos.
Romeos Maximos Nemdemadios.
Thank you. Ninioti, our fathers, Ithowab, holy, our holy fathers, and Romeos, the Romans, our holy Roman fathers, Maximus and Domitius, Maximus and Domitius. Very good. Okay. Let's see. Madame Nadia Mikhail, would you like to try the next one? Okay, Mina, would you like to read the next one?
Sure. Abba Mosi,
Yes, Ava Musi, and yeah, continue.
Abba Yoenez Kami.
Good, thank you, Mina. Ava
Abba.
Musi, which is Ava Moses the Black, or Ava Moses the Strong. Ava Ioannis, again, Ioannis is John Kami, Ava John Kami. Okay. We also have Mina Yusuf. Can you read the next one?
Yeah, sure. It's of Daniel,
Ava Daniel, good. And the next one?
of Isidorus,
Isidorus, good. Thank you. Ava Daniel, Ava Isidorus. These are all, it's easy because they're all names. We're just practicing to read here. Okay, let's see who hasn't read yet. Carla, would you like to try?
Ava Pahom.
Good. Ava Bachum.
Ava Shinuti.
Good. Ava Bachum, which is Ava Bachum or Ava Bachumius. Ava Shinuti, which is Ava Shinuda. Okay. Let's see. Malak, would you like to try?
Yeah, sure. K Aba Babnuti, Aba Barsuma, Aba Tiji.
Very good. Very good. K is Greek. Even though this is a Coptic hymn, for some reason they stuck this Greek word in it. They could have just said nim, but you know, when you borrow words from one language to another, sometimes words sneak in. So K and Ava Bafnoti, Ava Barsoma, Ava Teji, Ava Bafnotius or Bafnoti. Bafnoti actually is a very nice name. If Noti means what? Like we say, if Noti Nainan, it means God, right? So Pafnoti means the one who belongs to God. So it's a very nice name. Pafnoti means the one that belongs to God. Ava Barsoma, which is Ava Barsoma, and Ava Teji in Arabic is also Ambarwis. The second part of this hymn is all Greek. So the first part was Coptic, the second one was Greek. So let's focus on the first part first, because this is the easy one. So I will read it one time, just for to make sure that we are pronouncing it correctly. Pi-Nishti Ava Antoni, Nempi Ithmi Ava Pavli, Nempi Shomt Ithowab Ava Macarius, Ava Ioannis Bikolovos. I'll chant this part. I know you're familiar with it, so it should be very easy. Pi-Nishti Ava Antoni, Nempeth mi Ava Pavli, Nembi Shom Tithowab Macarius, Ava Ioannis Bikolovos. Can we try to chant this? If you want to go off mute and chant with me, that's great. If you want to chant while you're still muted, that's also okay, but just I want everybody to try to chant, okay? 1, 2, 3. Pi-Nishti Ava Antoni, Nem beth mi ava. Nem bishom Makarios Avayu Very good, very good. Let's say it one more time, okay? 1, 2, 3. Binishti Avani Nembesmi Avavli Nembishontis Makario Avayu Anis Bikolo Avabishon. Let's listen to the next part. I'll chant it, and then we can chant it together. Avabishoy Avavli. Like these two are connected together. Actually, because Ava Bishoy and his friend Ava Paul after Mu, they were like very close friends. So even in the hymn, they are close together.
Always together.
Yeah. Ava Bishoy Ava Pavli. Let's try this. Ava Bishoy Ava Pavli. Good. Listen to the next part. Nenioti Maximos So let's try together from Nenioti is a web. Nenioti is Meos Maximos Nem Dometios. Next part, listen. Avamusi. Like we take a pause here with Avamusi. Avamusi. And the O is just a little bit longer. Let's try. Avamusi. How many notes? I think 3 notes on the O. Avamusi. And the third one is when we say the C. Okay, let's say from Nenioti and Avamusi. Nenioti is Meos Maximos Nem Dometios Avamusi. Good. This is the next part. Listen again. Avayu Anis Kami Avadani. Let's try together. Ava
You
Yohannes Ken
One more time. Ava
Yohannes Kami
Good. Next part, listen. Ava Isizoros Ava Bechum Ava Enuti. So the Shinuti, the E, is a little bit longer. Listen again. Ava Isizoros Ava Bechum Ava Enuti. So the E is 5, and then we go into the N. Let's try. Ava Isizoros Ava Bechum Ava One more time. Ava Isizoros Ava Bechum Ava Listen back to the last part. The last part is a little bit faster, but Ava Tishi will be long. Ke Ava Bafnuti Ava Barsuma. Let's say this part. This is very easy. Ke Ava Bafnuti Ava Barsuma. One more time. Ke Ava Bafnuti Ava Barsuma. Listen back. Ava. Let's just say Ava. Ava. How many is that? Let's count. Ke Ava Bafnuti Ava Barsuma Ava 5. Okay. Ava Okay. Listen to the next part. Te So 1 and 3, and then we have to write this out. If you want the count, because I didn't write the counts, but listen to it, okay? Many notes there, right?
Mm.
This one, like I said, I think if we want to learn it, we need to like write down the notes so it's easier for us to remember. But let's say from the second part to the end. Okay, let's try. 1, 2, 3. Ava bishoy ava pavli nemiotis oavero mehus
Hacemos adiós. Amamos
Isizoros Avashi Eloti Ke Ava Bafnoti Ava Barsomia Very good, very good. Very good. Okay, let us, since we are learning about how celebrating Saint Anthony, let's learn about some church history and about the monastic movement and how did monasticism start and how it became into what it is today and how at the beginning, what were the roots of monasticism. So we will learn about the principles of Christian monasticism because there's other monasticisms as well. We'll learn about early monasticism and the important monastic groups. And if there's time, we may get into the weaknesses in the monastic movement and why, we will see how powerful the monastic movement was at the beginning. And then over the years, there were some weaknesses in it. So at the beginning, let's define what monasticism is. Monasticism in Arabic, rahbana, monasticism. From the Greek word monachos, which is coming from monos, which means one or alone. So a monastic is somebody who lives by himself. So somebody who leaves the world behind to focus on a spiritual goal. And with monasticism, the monastic lives an ascetic life. The word asceticism may be sometimes a hard word for people to pronounce. Asceticism from the Greek word askesis, which means exercise or training. So now we know that the monk is a person who lives by himself in order to focus on a spiritual goal, and he has some kind of exercise or training program that he goes through. So it's a lifestyle that's characterized by abstinence from sensual pleasures. Pope Shenouda has a very nice saying about the definition of monasticism, and he said that monasticism is the detachment from all and the attachment to the one. Detachment from all and the attachment to the one. Who's the one? Of course, and here I wrote it in capital O, of course, God. So a monastic is somebody who leaves everything behind, who detaches, who separates from everyone and everything in order to attach to the one, which is God, the Lord Jesus Christ. Is there monasticism in other religions? Yes. In Judaism, there was monastics even in the Old Testament. So we hear of the Nazarites, right? Who's a famous Nazarite in the Old Testament? Begins with S. Yeah, Samson. Samson was a Nazarite. So by that definition, Samson was actually a monk, and he had vows that he had to take. So as a Nazarite, he couldn't cut his hair, he couldn't shave his hair. As a Nazarite, he couldn't drink wine. As a Nazarite, he couldn't touch anything that's defiled, including the dead body. And as a Nazarite, he could not engage in sexual immorality. And when you read the story of Samson, you see that he broke every one of those vows in his life.
That's right.
The Essenes is also another group of Jews who lived in a kind of a monastic lifestyle. Outside of Judaism and Christianity, there's also in the Asian religions, we have monasticism. So we see like Buddhist monks and Hindu monks and so on. So it's not just in Christianity, but we want to understand the difference between the Asian monasticism and the Christian monasticism. In the Asian monasticism, the focus is on crushing the body, because they understand that you can only obtain eternal bliss by crushing the body. That's why they do things like, they self-inflict themselves, they whip their bodies, they walk on hot coal, they sleep on beds of nails, things like that, because they understand that in order to reach some kind of spiritual level, they have to like crush the body. This is different from Christian monasticism. In Christian monasticism, we understand the subjection of the body, That's different from crushing the body. Like St. Paul says, I discipline my body and bring it into subjection. Subjection to what? Subjection to the spirit. So now I take the body and I make it subject to the spirit. As he also says in Galatians, for the flesh lusts against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. So there's a war between the body and the spirit. The body wants to do things, like the body wants to sleep, the body wants to rest, the body wants to watch TV, right? What does the spirit want to do? The spirit wants to go to church. The spirit wants to fast. The spirit wants to pray. So there's a battle between, and he says, and these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. So what is monasticism? It gives you the power to subject the body so that the spirit can become stronger. And as St. Paul also says, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. So this is the difference between, Christian monasticism and other monasticisms. We are not trying to crush the body. We're not trying to, make the body is not a bad thing. God gave us the body. He created the flesh. He blessed it. He took our flesh when he became man. So there's nothing wrong with the body. But here, the issue or the challenge is to bring it into subjection, to control the body so that you can do the things that your spirit wants to do. In Christian monasticism, there are three pillars, three principles. The first one is celibacy. And the second one is obedience, blind obedience. And the third one is voluntary poverty. And all three of these are based on the life of the Lord Jesus Christ. So let's take each one of them and understand celibacy. So the life of virginity and celibacy. And there's a difference between celibacy and solitary, okay? Celibacy is a life of what? It's a life of purity. So, can a married man be celibate? Yes, he can. A married man can be pure. And we have some examples, like the example of Saint Demetrius, the vine dresser, the patriarch, who was married, but he lived a life of purity with his wife. Also in modern history, Father Bishoy Kemen, who also was married, but he lived the life of purity with his wife. So a married person can be celibate. Can a solitary person be, or is it necessary that a solitary person is pure? No. Solitary does not mean purity. Many people who are unmarried or single, they live in sin. So being single does not mean that you are celibate. Samson, the Nazarite, as we already mentioned, he was a monk, he was a Nazarite, and he committed sin and many sins. And eunuchs are also not necessarily pure. So there's a difference between celibacy and solitary, and here we are talking about purity. We are talking about a life of purity. Examples of celibacy in the Old Testament, we have Elijah, the prophet, and his disciple, Elisha. They were both basically monks. Saint John the Baptist, he was not married, and he lived a life of purity. The Virgin Saint Mary was also celibate. The Lord Jesus Christ himself, and that's where we take the example of monasticism from the life of the Lord Jesus Christ. And Saint John the Beloved, his disciple, was also a virgin. And that's why one of the church fathers, he talked about when the Lord appeared on the Sea of Tiberias to the disciples, and the only one who recognized him was Saint John, and he's the one who told Saint Peter, it is the Lord. And so the church father said John the Virgin was the only one who knew the Virgin, the Son of the Virgin. Why? What's the point? Why is this principle of celibacy important in monasticism? St. Paul says, but I want you to be without care. For he who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. So there is nothing wrong with marriage. Marriage is a good thing, and God blessed marriage. And if we remember, the Lord blessed the wedding of Cana of Galilee. If there was something wrong with marriage, God would not bless it. But here the focus is on how do you focus your worship, or how do you dedicate your time? A person who is married has a wife and has kids and has a household, and it is his duty to take care of his wife and his household and his children. So he must focus on that. But a person who is not married, he doesn't have those obligations. And so he has the ability to focus on just worshiping the Lord, how he may please the Lord. So then he who gives her in marriage does well. So there's nothing wrong with marriage. He who gets married is good, does well. But he who does not give her in marriage does better. So this is a better, higher level because he can focus on worshiping God, not because there's anything wrong with marriage. So that was the first principle, the principle of celibacy. The second principle is the life of obedience. And again, we take this from the life of the Lord Jesus Christ. He taught us obedience. And he said what St. Paul says, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. And the Lord himself, when he prayed to the Father, he said, what? Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. So here the Lord is submitting his will to the will of the Father. And he's saying, Father, whatever it is that you see is the thing that I should do, then I will do it. And this is the life of obedience. We have a very nice example in the book of Jeremiah about a group of people, a family called the Recobytes. There's only one verse about them in the whole Bible, but it's a very nice verse. What does this say in Jeremiah chapter 35? They came to these Recobytes and asked them, will you drink wine? And they said, we will drink no wine. For Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, commanded us, saying, you shall drink no wine, you nor your sons forever. This is a prime example of obedience. The Recobytes they They did not try to, see what is and what is not. No, they said very simply, our Father told us something and we will obey it. Whether it makes sense to you or not, it's not our concern. He told us don't drink wine, and so we will not drink wine. That's the life of obedience. Many stories in the life of the saints about their obedience. Saint John the Short, as you see in the picture there, if you know the story, his abbot, his father, gave him one day a piece of stick, his walking stick, which is a dead piece of wood, and he told him, go and plant it. Okay, if anybody came to us and told us, take this piece of dead wood and go and plant it, what are we going to say? You're crazy. This is a dead piece of wood. Why would I do that? But St. John did not argue. He did not debate. He took the piece of wood and he planted it in the ground, and he started to water 2 times a day. And it's not like the water was right next to the tree. No, the water was far away. He has to go to the well every morning and get water and water the dead piece of wood. And then in the evening, he would go and get water and water the dead piece of the wood until time passed by. And this dead piece of wood became a tree, which is miraculous because it's a dead piece of wood. It has no life in it. But because of obedience, God allowed this piece of wood to become a tree. And so the abbot gathered the monks and he told them, come and eat of the fruit of obedience. St. John the Short is the prime example of obedience. He never argued, he never debated, he never, no matter what was asked of him, he would go and do it. Another time, his abbot told him, there's a hyena that roams around the wilderness here. I want you to go and get it for me. Again, most of us would say this old man, he's been out in the sun too long. Maybe I should find another abbot or something like that. This man is, but no, St. John said, okay, Father, sure. So he went and looked for the hyena. And when he found her, a strange thing happened. The hyena started to run away from him. Instead of chasing him as a wild animal, she started to run away from him. So he spoke to her and he said, stop, for my father needs you. So the hyena stopped, and then he took her and he brought her to his father. And when his father saw this, he didn't want John to fall into pride that, look, I have now command over the animals. So he told him, what is this? I told you to bring me a hyena and you bring me a dog? Let it go. So then St. John turned to the animal and said, you can go now, my father doesn't need you anymore. And so the hyena left. And this is, God gives grace to his saints who follow obedience, who listen to their spiritual fathers. And in monasticism, this is often one of the, one of the pillars or one of the principles that is often tested on the monks to see how obedient they are. Usually a monk is a novice or a brother for a period of time that can range from 3 to 5 years. And during this time, he's tested. And he's tested to see whether he can endure these 3 principles of celibacy, obedience, and poverty, and whether this life of monasticism is fit for him, and whether this monastery is fit for him, and whether he is fit for the monastery. So he may be a good candidate for monasticism, but maybe not in this monastery for whatever reason. So this is like a trial period. And typically the abbots, who are like the fathers of the monastery, they test the candidates during this time. So I'll give you just a few stories. There are many, many stories, but I'll just give you maybe a couple of stories. True stories. One time, the abbot, he took a piece of orban, and he put it on the ground. And then one of the brothers, he was passing by, so he saw the piece of orban on the ground. What would you do if you found a piece of orban on the ground? You would pick it up, right? That's the natural thing to do. So the brother picked up the piece of orban. The abbot came out of his cell and he yelled at him and he slapped him. And he said, who told you to touch this piece of bread? Is it yours? Put it back down. So the monk put it back down and he left. Then the next day, the monk came back and guess what? The piece of orban was still there, or maybe another piece of orban. So what did he do? Well, he learned his lesson from the previous time, so he did not touch the piece of korban, and he started to walk away. So the abbot came out of the cell and he yelled at him again and he slapped him again. And he said, when you see a piece of korban on the floor, do you just leave it or do you pick it up? Right? This may sound funny, right? But here's the test of obedience and also of endurance. If this monk doesn't have endurance and doesn't have obedience, he would go, you're crazy. I tried to pick it up yesterday and you yelled at me, and today I left it and you yelled at me. What do you want me to do? But in order to perceive his obedience and his endurance, he was tested like that. If you know the story of Saint Arsenius, he was the tutor of the king's sons, of the princes. And so he's used to living in the palace and eating, good food and things like that. So when he left all of that and when he became a monk, and of course in the monastery, they eat very simple food. They eat food, fava beans, right? And so Saint Arsenius would sit there and he would pick out like the dark or the black beans, and he would separate them, and he would only eat the white beans. So the abbot wanted to teach him a lesson. And so he told one of the other monks, he said, tomorrow at mealtime, I want you to sit next to Arsenius and do exactly whatever he does. So the monk obeyed and he said yes. So he sat down next to Saint Arsenius and he started to do exactly. He would pick out the black beans and put it to the side, and he would eat the white beans. So the abbot came and yelled and smacked this monk, and he said, what are you doing? When food is put in front of you, you eat whatever you want, whatever is put in front of you. You don't pick and choose. Of course, Saint Arsenius understood the lesson, and he said, the slap was meant for me because I'm the one who's actually doing this. But the point here is the obedience of the other monk who obeyed and took the slap without even asking, without even arguing, without even debating with his father. I'll tell you one last example, and then we'll move on. The abbot came and he called for one of the brothers, and he told him, I want you to do something, like don't debate with me, just do what I tell you to do. And he said, yes, Father, whatever you command. So he said, I called for another brother so-and-so. When he comes here, I want you to slap him in the face. Okay. And then he kind of took a side or went inside the cell to see what's going to happen. And then the other brother came, and the first brother told him, brother, somebody asked me to do something, and I'm afraid, I'm going to have to do it. So the second brother said, no, Father, you have to do whatever they tell you. This is obedience. You have to listen. So he said, okay, forgive me. And then he slapped him, right? So then the second brother started to yell at him. It's like, why do you slap me? I didn't do anything to you. Why are you slapping me around? So then the abbot came out, and to the first brother, he said, you're an obedient son. You can go back into the church. And then the other brother, he said, you take your stuff and go back home because you're not fit for the monastery, because you have no endurance and you have no obedience. So this is the life of obedience, complete obedience, blind obedience. The third principle is the principle of voluntary poverty. And this means forsaking the world willingly, leaving everything behind, leaving money, leaving property, leaving work, possession, everything. Again, from the life of the Lord, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Why? As the Lord said in Matthew chapter 6, do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. So this is the point, is that we're not trying to accumulate wealth here on earth. We're trying to accumulate treasures in heaven. Monasticism, this is very important. Monasticism is for those who are already successful in life. Successful in life. That means they finished their education, they worked, they are not failures. So if somebody who did not finish high school, he goes to the monastery, they will not accept him. They will tell him, go back and finish your education and work. And actually, I know personally of monks who did this. They went to the monastery before they finished their college, And the abbot knows that they are good candidates for monasticism, but he did not accept them. And he told them, go back and finish your education. Okay, they finished their education, they came. And he said, no, go back and work. Why, Abuna? I'm going to be a monk anyway, because you need to forsake everything willingly. If you go and join the monastery when you didn't finish high school or you didn't start college or whatever, then maybe down the road, you might start thinking, maybe I should have went to college. Maybe I should have worked. Maybe I should have married. Maybe I should have, right now I would have a nice car or a nice house or whatever. But when you already have these things and you willingly leave it, then you are ready. So this is why you go, you finish your education, you start work, you deal with peoples, you deal with money, you go through that experience. And then when you come to the monastery, you are saying, I already know all of that stuff. I've experienced it and I'm not concerned about it. I want to live the life of monasticism. When we talk about early monastics, if I ask you, who is the first monk? Who's the first monk? Can somebody respond to me?
Saint Anthony.
Most people will say Saint Anthony, because
Saint Paul.
because Saint Anthony is the monk who formulated monasticism. But actually, there were several people before him. So before him, in the first century, was Saint Frontius. Saint Frontius, he lived in the desert of Nitria with 70 youth, but he did not continue because there was no spiritual leader and there was no order. So he did not take upon himself the leadership role, and he did not put together any order. So they were all just living together, in the desert. And probably as they died, or maybe some of them went back or whatever, the movement kind of died. There was no organized order. The second person is Saint Synclitica. Saint Synclitica, for those who attended with us in St. Mary's Church, the New Year's Eve play, if you remember Saint Synclitica, she was a rich woman, or who inherited like many riches from her parents. When her parents died, she gave away her wealth, and she lived in a crypt. And her sister joined her, and then many women started to join her. And she is mentioned, and she was visited by Saint Anthony and Saint Athanasius. So, as we say that Saint Anthony is the father of monks, we can say that Saint Synclitica is the mother of monks, or the mother of the women's monastic movement. Saint Paul, somebody mentioned Saint Paul. Yes, Saint Paul was before Saint Anthony. Saint Paul of Thebes, the first hermit, he went into the desert at the age of 16, a teenager. And he lived in complete seclusion for how many years? Can somebody guess?
I'm gonna say 70. 70.
70 years.
90 years. 90 years. He lived in seclusion for that means when Saint Anthony visited him, he was 105 years old. And then when he came the next year to bury him, he was 106 years old. So he lived for 90 years in the desert, never returned to the world. And Saint Anthony visited him. He did not establish any order, but he established the idea of hermitage, which is the life of complete seclusion. And this is important because this is what Saint Macarius later will take. He will take from the order of Saint Anthony and Saint Paul and put them together to create the order of monasticism of Saint Macarius. We don't have many sayings from Saint Paul, except this one saying, "He who flees from sufferings flees from God." And a nice thing to note, when Saint Anthony met Saint Paul asked him about two things, and we may wonder about these two things that he asked him about. He asked him about the flooding of the Nile, whether the Nile is flooding according to its seasons, and he asked him about the heresy of Arius, because this was at the time of Saint Anthony. So here we wonder, number one, why does St. Paul care about the flooding of the Nile? He's living in the desert. And how did he even know about the heresy of Arius, being that he's been in the desert for 90 years? He cares about the flooding of the Nile because even though he is a hermit and he is separated or secluded from the rest of the world, he is not separated from them. He still has communion, or he still has, care about his brethren who are living in the world. So he's asking that, if the Nile floods according to seasons, so that means that people are getting the water and being able to grow the crops and everything like that. And how did he know about the heresy of Arius? The only thing we can think of is God revealed it to him, because since he has no connection with the world, he would have never learned about something like this. So this gives us the idea that those who are hermits are not separated. They are not completely just, severed from the world, because they are, in communion with God, and God reveals to them many things. Then we get to Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony the Great, the father of monasticism. And his disciples, Saint Hilarian, who established monasticism in Palestine, Saint Macarius the Great, the father of Sketes, Saint Amun, the father of Nitria, and Saint Athanasius the Apostolic. So every single monk in the whole world is a disciple of Saint Anthony, because he is the father of, as we saw here. If we go to Palestine, we will see that the one who started monasticism in Palestine was Saint Hilarian, who is the disciple of Saint Anthony. And as we will see also later, that all of the monastic movements, even in Europe, started from the roots of Saint Anthony, whether directly from him or from his disciples. So every single monk in the whole world is a disciple of Saint Anthony. Pope Shenouda, when he visited the Vatican some years ago, before his departure, of course, and he met with some of the monks there in the Vatican. And so he told the Pope of Rome, he told him, that these monks are mine. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, because Saint Anthony is the father of all monks. And so since these monks are disciples or sons of Saint Anthony, therefore they are Coptic and they belong to me. Of course, it was like, a nice gesture, and he's trying to get the point that Saint Anthony is the father of all monks. How did the monasticism of Saint Anthony start? It started on the outskirts of the city. So as we said, there are many people who attempted before him, like Saint Frontius, for example, but because they did not have an order, it did not continue. So Saint Anthony started to go to each one of these hermits, and he would learn from them. He would see what they are doing, what they learned, and he would pick up, virtues from this person, this person, this person, and kind of, learn from them. So he did that for a number of years, and then he started to live on the banks of the Nile, and he lived 15 years on the banks of the Nile. So first he was just, on the outskirts of the city, so not too far. Then he started to go a little bit further away from the city, but he was still living on the banks of the Nile. And we may know the story of the bathing woman. So as he was one day meditating or worshiping, this woman came in front of him, and she started to bathe in the Nile. And so he got upset, and he told her, how can you do this? How can you bathe in front of me, and I am a hermit, or I'm a monk? And so she told him, if you are a monk, then you need to go into the inner wilderness, because this place is not fit for monks. Saint Anthony did not get upset. He did not tell her, you're an ungodly woman and you're trying to teach me. He took this as the voice of God, and he said, okay, God is telling you, leave this place and go into the inner desert. So he went into the inner desert, and he found an old fort, and he lived there for 20 years in complete shut-in. This is what is called Deir el-Maymun. And many disciples began to live around him, and they would find a cave or a hut or something, and they would live. So he was compelled to leave the fort and to start teaching them the life of monasticism. And in the inner desert, he built, or he started, the first monastery, which is in the Red Sea Mountains. And this was in the year 305 AD. So the Antonian monastic order is called Cenobitism. Cenobitism means living in a religious community. So you have novices who are disciples, and you have an abbot. And then you have Anchoritism. This is the order of Saint Macarius, which he learned. We said who started the idea of hermitage? It was Saint Paul, right? So Saint Macarius took from Saint Paul, but Saint Paul lived in seclusion completely in the middle of nowhere for 90 years. He combined the life of hermitage of Saint Paul with the life of cenobitism of Saint Anthony, where each monk would live in seclusion but with a disciple. And this is actually what was found when they started to excavate the Nitria mountains and the mountains of the cells. They found many tiny monasteries. Each monastery is basically a cell that has room for an abbot and his disciple, like that. And each cell was a 3-hour walk from the other cell and from the Cenobitic community. The Cenobitic community would be where they have the church and where they would have the cafeteria where they sit and eat. So you have, in the middle, you have the Cenobitic community, and then around it, you have all of these tiny monasteries where each monk lives with his disciple. And each, as I said, between each one of them is a 3-hour walk. Why a 3-hour walk? This is very interesting. The meals were, they didn't eat before the 9th hour, which is 3 p.m. So the monk will have to walk 3 hours after the meal to return to his cell or to visit one of his brethren. And it will be after sunset, right? So, noon is the 6th hour. So nobody's going to be walking in the middle of the heat of the sun in the noon time, right? So he will begin to walk after he has his meal in the church at 3 p.m. And he'll walk 3 hours either to get back to his cell, so he'll get there at 6 p.m., or he will go and visit one of the monks. So if he goes and visits one of the monks, one of his brethren, he cannot stay too long because he has to still walk another 3 hours to get to his cell. If he stays too long, it'll be too dark. So this allows the monks to be able to visit each other, but not to stay too long, so that it gives them a chance to spend more time in prayer and worship. As we said, the order of complete seclusion or hermitage, that was the order of St. Paul. And Cenobitism or Anchoritism, this is the order of St. Macarius. Then we have the Koinonia or communities. This is St. Pachomius. This is later. And the Koinonia was a military style, very organized order, where you have small groups of people that live together. And they all have the same canon. They all have the same prayer time. They all have the same meals, the same waking hours, the same retiring hours. So everything is organized like the military. We'll talk about the monastic garb, which is the attire that the monks wear. So as you see in the picture there, it's black, but actually originally it was white. It was not black. And this attire was worn by the angel that appeared to Saint Anthony, and he taught him monasticism. And after he sat with him and he taught him, because Saint Anthony got, he was bored after a while. It was the first time trying this, and after he prayed, like he got bored, so he doesn't know what to do. So the angel appeared to him, and he taught him that he would pray for a little bit, and then he would sit down and he would weave baskets from the palms, and then he would stand up and pray, and then he would sit down and do some more work, and that way he would not get bored. And then he left this attire to Saint Anthony. So he left the tunic and he left the kolonsova, which is the head covering. Why was it white? White because it exudes the sun's heat. Because if you're sitting in the desert all day, you're wearing black, this will attract the heat of the sun. Initially, you see this the kolonsoa here, it has like a line, right? A stitched line in the middle. Initially, this was not there. But during one of the battles with the demons, between Saint Anthony and Satan, so Satan took his kolonsoa and he tore it in half. And so Saint Anthony sat down and he suited up in the middle. And so now all the monks, when they wear the kolonsoa, it has that stitched line to remind them that they are always in battle with Satan and they always need to be ready. In the 10th century, the Arabs compelled the Christians to wear black, not just the monks, but all the Christian clergy as a sign of poverty. And so they used to wear black except when they were praying the liturgies. In the liturgies, they would wear white. And in Upper Egypt, in the order of Saint Bohemis and Saint Shenouda, they wore a small cap. So you see some pictures of some monks. They're not wearing a kolonsoa, but they're wearing like a small cap. And then they would have sheepskins on their shoulders and on their knees. The sheepskins on their shoulders to help them carry burdens, as they're working, and on their knees for the metanias. We'll stop here for today, and we can continue, God willing, next time. We will learn more about the monastic orders and like where the different groups started from, and maybe we'll also learn about some of the monastic fathers that we know about, but now we can learn their stories. And glory be to God forever. Amen.